Hello and welcome back to Exothermic Plays Games. I'm Exothermic and the date today is Monday, September 2nd, 2024. I've been doing a countdown of my favorite video games of all time through each day of the year, and coming in at number 121 is Live A Live. Two things about this video. First, this is obviously not the 1994 version of the game. It's the 2022 remake of the game on the Nintendo Switch, and it's absolutely the best way to play the game. It's fully voice acted, the graphics are entirely redone in a great 2D, 3D style, and the music is of course fully redone with actual instruments. Oh, and obviously, this is the only official way to play the game in English, because the game had never been released outside of Japan until the remake. The second thing to mention is that the original version released 30 years ago today! This is actually lined up purely by coincidence. You don't have to believe me, but it is true. On to the game. Live A Live is one of the most unique role-playing games I've ever played, and while it certainly has some rough edges, the way everything comes together is truly incredible. I'm going to try avoiding doing too many spoilers, but there will inevitably be some. I'm trying to keep it broad strokes. Combat is turn-based and done on a grid with an active battle system meter, kind of. Every action you take, like moving, allows other character bars to just fill a little bit more, which does mean sometimes opponents take turns while you're doing other stuff. The fighting is really straightforward outside of that though, with different attacks that have different types with a resistance and weakness system, and you can see roughly the damage they'll do, range with the range for targeting, and any special effects. You pick them, you do them. Stuff dies. Every once in a while, there are a few wrinkles, like knockback effects and ground effects you shouldn't stand in, but that's basically it, mechanically. There's lots of theming that happens, which is remarkable that they pulled off what I'm about to explain with a singular unified combat system that doesn't change across any of them. Live A Live's success, and definitely my favorite thing about it, is largely derived from the way you experience the story. There are 7 different, totally unconnected storylines you can play from different periods of history, and generally each one takes a few hours to complete. In chronological order, prehistory is first, following a caveman kid who falls in love with a girl. He's actually much more Homo sapien, maybe not quite, I'm not sure, living amongst Neanderthals, and the girl is probably the first ever other human he's met. His best friend is one of the Neanderthals he lives with, and they go on a journey to rescue the girl and kill a giant dinosaur named Odo. There's no dialogue in this section, but a lot of visual humor. Next is Imperial China. A martial arts master is looking for a protege before he dies, and through happenstance, takes 3 children under his wing. One proves to be truly worthy, and together, they stop the villain, named Odiwan, terrorizing the nearby village. Going forward a bit more, we reach Edo, Japan. You're a ninja sent on a mission to rescue someone and kill the captor, a demon in disguise, named Ode Iu. This one has way more puzzles than most of the others, which does result in a lot of backtracking if you mess up, but it's rewarding when you get them right. After that is the Wild West. You're a gunslinger that wanders into town and are chased by a bounty hunter. But due to circumstance, you instead team up with the bounty hunter to take out the bandits terrorizing the town, led by Odio. There's a whole sequence where you set up traps in preparation of the bandits returning, and it's pretty fun to see if you did it well. From there, we get to the present day of the mid-90s, present day. This one's actually really fun. It's kind of in 2 segments. First, you're in a world-class fighting tournament, think like Street Fighter, and you start out with just a couple attacks, but each time you defeat an enemy, you learn one move from them eventually culminating in having everything at the end. And the thing that makes it interesting is that you can do this in any order, and the difficulty of some fights varies wildly depending on which moves you've already unlocked. After you've won the tournament, the actual narrative part of this kicks off a bit more, and you have to defend yourself from less than honorable challengers seeking to claim your title, such as Odie O'Bright. Next is the near future. Aesthetically, when they say near future, they mean Akira meets Gundam or maybe Power Rangers. Some of these lean heavily into different genre tropes. This one is a Sentai, and that includes a song!
Forgotten place, Babylonia. The king was forced with fist of steel, and the heavens quaked to defeat and destroy the evil that now comes. Furious and righteous with the rain. Hearts afraid with purpose true, call him to the fight. The king of kings, swift Titan, will keep him barred.
I'm sure there's a socket here somewhere.
You wind up controlling a giant mech to fight off an ancient deity named Odeo, spelled O-D-E-O, this matters, possessing a gigantic idol through sacrificial rituals. You're a kind of rebellious punk orphan who happens to have psychic powers. I mentioned this is Akira inspired. Well, your character's name is literally Akira. Lastly, there's the distant future. You're in space and the crew of your ship have been woken from cryo a little early. There's a terrible monster loose on your ship, and the only thing that can save you is a very crappy service robot. The real threat is the computer for the ship itself, which the robot can interact with and override, so that works out. The computer is referred to as OD-10. Unlike all of the others, this one doesn't actually have combat. Okay, that's not entirely true, but I only lied like a little. There's an arcade game that is just the combat of this game that you can play in their cafeteria, which does level up your robot for later. Yes, later, as in when you're done with that story. I also lied when I said there were 7 sections of the game. There's 8. Once you beat the first 7 and the 8th unlocks set in the Middle Ages. A valiant knight, Oersted, wins the princess's hand in marriage through combat, but then she's kidnapped, and he has to go save her. Through much trickery and shenanigans, he accidentally murders the king, and his life totally falls apart because of course he's banished from the kingdom for treason, and just everything is terrible. And he descends into darkness, changing his name to Odeo, spelled O-D-I-O. Okay, I lied again. There's 9 sections of this game. After Oersted becomes the champion of darkness, he really ascends to power in a shrine that includes all of the different Odeo enemies from all the other timelines, including ones from his future. Each of the champions gets pulled into the Middle Ages. You pick one to start with, but then you can explore all of the areas that you ran through as Oersted to find them, and find more gear to equip, and keep leveling them up, and all of that. It's a whole big section of the game. This is such a great way to tie everything together, and the writing and voice acting is phenomenal. This section of the game is great with loads of hidden items and even special mini-bosses and areas you can only access once you've recruited specific characters. But another thing that makes it great is that you don't need to do any of that. You can just go to where you know Odeo will be waiting for you and just try to solo it. You'll die, but you can try. You can do any combination of characters, and depending on what combination you do, you'll even get different endings. Or, if you recruited everyone, an additional super ultimate final boss will appear. There's loads to explore here, and it's one of the most epic conclusions to any game I have ever played. It was when I got to here that I understood why the friend that lent me this game to begin with kept suggesting I try it out. But that's not all. You could argue I have lied some more and there are 10 stages to this game. If you start the final stage of the game as Orsted, you'll instead be playing as Odio. From within the confines of his dark fortress, he monologues a whole ton, with, at least for the remake, what is by far the best voice acting in the already impressively voiced game.
For hunger drives a beast. To fight, to kill, to feed, survive. Naught else. But man, he's more complex, more fool, more mad. His hunger knows no end. The world's his meal. I'll teach him manners then. Restraint. Respect. To the last, you stayed the course. Pursued your heart's desires, with eyes unclouded. So close. But alas, like me, deprived, nay, robbed of just reward, disgraced and dumped, the villain. Slanderous lies. A winner's justice. History bent to win. The losers silenced, stripped of voice and claim, and stricken from the page. If that's the game, I'll play alone. Cross time and space and stand. Or we the damned, rewrite the tale. Just so. Your statues 7 are my ink and quill, with magic potent, singular, pure hate. Assume the guise we share, for we are Odio. And we will win!
The music is remarkable, the visuals are remarkable, the acting is remarkable. This is when I went from thinking this game was very cool, to thinking it's something really special. If the combat wasn't just the same for every character, this would easily be a top 100 game, maybe top 50. But the dated fight mechanics do hold it back a bit, and admittedly some of the original storylines that you do when you're in each character's time period, I mean, they're only a few hours long, there's not that much depth, right? But you know what doesn't hold anything back? The soundtrack. I already covered the last game Yoko Shimomura composed for Capcom when I ranked Street Fighter II as my 164th game. That was the last game she composed for Capcom because she got hired by Square. Well, welcome to the first game she composed after joining Square. I'm going to talk a lot more about Yoko Shimomura later in the year, but she was already doing a lot of very special things here. The soundtrack is great. The game is one of the coolest JRPGs I've ever played, and it offers something for everyone. Some of the storylines are very serious, some are purely comedy, most blend the two with pretty good results. None of the individual storylines really overstay their welcome, and the culmination in the end elevates the whole thing to something far greater than the sum of its parts. Join me tomorrow as I talk about my 120th favorite game, where I am an alligator with shoes, and that's really about it.